Welcome back to BBN After Dark. We've got our top 50 prospects list here debuting today. Very excited for this one. We've made now 4 prospects lists in the last year: November 2022, February 2023, August 2023, and now finally our November one. This is considered our kind of pre-winter training one, and then we'll make another prospect list at the end of winter training in February to kind of see how these guys move up and down over the course of the winter. But this is a fun one. A lot of very good players on this list. A lot of good players who didn't even crack the top 50 prospects. It's crazy. The first prospect list that me and Bernie did was 15 players long, and now we're making a 50 prospect list every single couple of months, and leaving guys off it that are very, very good. So very, very impressive. We're going to start from the top with our number 1 prospect of the Bears, joining a list of very exclusive company in terms of the number 1 prospects. ZZ Garcia comes to mind. Diego Buccio was a number 1 prospect at one point. Braden King. And then our last number 1 prospect was, who was our last number 1 prospect? Do you remember?
Garrett Knight.
Garrett Knight, that is right. So a ton of exclusive players here on the number 1 prospect list. It is Joey Burgess, another catcher, who gets on the number 1 prospect. He's our number 1 catching prospect, number 1 14U prospect, number 1 prospect overall. This guy is in the starting lineup for 14U Floyd going into next spring, either at catcher or EH or in the outfield. Somewhere on the field, he's going to be starting. A beast with the bat. I think it's easy to say he's the best hitter on this top 50 prospect list for sure. KJ, I know this is a guy you've been tooting the horn for a lot. Tell me about Joey Burgess and where you see him falling among the other number 1 prospects that we've ranked in the past year and a half.
Yeah, Joey's a beast, and I think he's already, he's further ahead within discipline than Garrett Knight was at this point when he was the number 1 prospect. I think Joey, he's still a free swinger. He's going to strike out, and I think if you're willing to deal with the strikeouts, then you're going to get rewarded with a bunch of home runs as well.
Yeah, I mean the power is unbearable. I mean this guy just absolutely mashes at the plate, and I think we started to see him, like you said, KJ, become a little bit more of a mature hitter down the stretch as he got called up to 14U Floyd and was playing with those guys. To play at that level, you got to be able to lay off speed, and I think he struggled with that at the beginning of his time with 14U Floyd, but really developed, and at times he was hitting in the middle of the order. So I could see this guy being a beast next year. I think he's going to be an all-star caliber player going into next season, and very excited to see where he kind of ranks going forward. Moving into our number 2 prospect, it is Rudy Montenegro Langley, one of the biggest risers from our last prospect list, up 24 spots. He was previously ranked number 26. He's now ranked number 2. He was our number 1 prospect at 12U and our number 1 prospect in the infield. Bernie, I'll go to you for this one because he's obviously your player. Just barely under the prospect length. I should have said before, to be a prospect, you have to be under 50 career plate appearances with a varsity team. I believe Rudy has like 47, so definitely not going to be a prospect for much longer. But Bernie, this guy's a beast. I mean, I don't know if there's anybody a bigger Rudy fan than I am, except maybe you. But this guy, to me, very mature at bats, good plate discipline, but also with the pure power that you kind of like. Bernie, give me your thoughts on Rudy Montenegro Langley as our number 2 prospect.
Yeah, this is someone that I think could easily been ranked higher at the start. We should see enough of him early on, but as fall went on, he's got better and better. I think this guy, going into next year, he's gonna be a starter for me. I think I'm expecting him to play a big role for my offense. I think he'll be somewhere, batting at least in the top 5, not top 4. And just the work ethic I've seen from this kid coming in, I see no reason why he's not going to continue doing that. I think that if he does or if he stays involved, this guy will be, a household Bears name come next spring.
Yeah, I think, the quest for this 12U Burnsville team has been to add a core of guys around Harrison Blaybaum. And when you're talking about somebody who can protect him potentially, Rudy could be it, or even hit in front of him, just giving another guy in that lineup that scares opposing defenses. I think Rudy could be that. I think he's got a ton of power with the plate discipline. And also, I think he's a pretty good defender. And he's starting to learn how to pitch. So when you talk about a guy who could be an MVP caliber player in the next year, 2 years, or 3 years, I think Rudy could be it. A very, very impressive player. Very excited to see how he develops. Our number 3 prospect, up 6 spots from number 9 when we did this list in August, is Gunnar Wilson, our number 1 15U prospect, our number 2 catching prospect. This is a guy who, what's interesting is when we initially kind of ranked him as a prospect, we thought it was going to be mostly pitching. We thought that's where he was going to develop, his value to the 15U Floyd team. But the catching and the offense has kind of overseeded his pitching. And I think he's been a very impressive catcher and very impressive bat. KJ, I'll go to you for this one. Obviously, this guy's on your BWL team. Great presence as well. That's something we don't necessarily talk about all the time. Great personality. KJ, what do you think about Gunnar Wilson and his kind of ceiling as a Bear player?
Yeah, Gunnar is a beast. And, like you said, he's definitely a guy you want around your team, and a guy that's going to play hard for Rob. He takes it really seriously. He's very competitive. Everyone likes Gunnar, and he's really started to work really hard. He's a guy who's at Bud Dome a lot, and not just on nights he has workouts or free swing. He's coming up to just hitting the cage sometimes. So he's a guy who's willing to work, and let's get noticed by Rob. I know Rob loves his size, and I think he's going to be a big contributor for them.
Yeah, and the big thing for me is all of these prospects at some point when they go up to the varsity team and are starting to get regular at bats, they're going to go through a struggle period where they're going to have to learn how to deal with that. I think Gunnar has started to go through that little bit of struggle toward the end of the fall, where if he can already kind of overcome that and go into next spring saying, okay, I know how to deal with failure and I'm ready to be a top player, that could potentially give him an edge. Rudy and Joey maybe can kind of say they've already gone through that struggle period, but I think Gunnar especially has been through that kind of adjustment period to the top team, where if he can go in to next season with that mentality already, kind of secured, I think you could see this guy really take off to start next year. Very, very excited for Gunnar Wilson as well. Our next prospect, number 4, this is our number 1 11U prospect, number 2 infield prospect. He is up 2 spots from number 6 in August. He's now number 4. It's Carson Griffith. This guy who I like a lot. I think he is a all facets type baseball player. When we talk about 5 tools, I think he's got at least 4, with maybe speed not necessarily being in his game. He's not slow, but I wouldn't necessarily call him fast. But good defense, good bat, good arm, can pitch, can hit. I mean, this guy can really do it all. I think is a future superstar at this age. But Bernie, I know you've been practicing with 11. You've seen this guy a lot. Give me your thoughts on Carson Griffith, and where do you think his kind of ceiling is for the Bears?
Yeah, Carson has the potential to be one of those guys that does everything. Obviously doesn't play the same position as Mac, his coach, but that type of player. A guy who can pitch, plays lights out defense, and also has a really good bat. And I think that maybe the knock on Carson was the bat toward the start of the fall, but he went through a stretch where I think he put up some insane stats this fall. I know he moved up in the order like to 3 or 4 toward the end of the fall. I know Mac loves him. I know he made an appearance at BWL recently in a 12-13 league as an 11-year-old. So I think this sky's the limit for this kid.
Yeah, and this guy's gritty. I put him out there. He's obviously playing up in BWL. I needed a second baseman because my starting infielders were pitching. I need a second baseman. I bring him up. He's playing above his age. He gets a rocket ground ball at him, takes it off the face, and then stayed in the game. Didn't even complain, didn't cry, stayed in the game, and ended up getting some big outs for me. Even on the mound, he got a big out for me. So I think this kid's got a ton of grit. I think he's got the makings of a future MVP. I think this 11U Floyd team, although there's some guys like Owen Haynes, like Lucas Closter, I don't know if there's a solidified superstar on this team yet. I think Carson Griffith could be that guy. He's that kind of player for me. Very, very excited for Carson Griffith moving forward. Moving in, rounding out our top 5 prospects here in the Bears, our BBN prospects, it is Owen Weibrecht. He's our number 1 outfield prospect, number 1 13U prospect. This guy, I think, either hadn't joined when we made our August prospect list or missed the first couple practices, so we didn't see him. He was unranked in our previous list. Now Owen Weibrecht here at number 5. KJ, this guy, obviously a defensive first player, but especially late in the season and even in BWL, I feel like we've started to see his bat come around. Give me your thoughts on Owen Weibrecht as a top 5 prospect, KJ.
Yeah, Owen he's a workhorse, and he definitely came in the door. Already a really good defender, but the bat wasn't there, and I think the bat is starting to get there. He had a huge at bat off of ZZ in the BWL. Took a couple really good at bats. The defense is still spectacular. He's gonna force me to put him in the outfield just because how good he is in the outfield. And he's starting to pitch as well. So this is a guy you never have to worry about his work ethic. I know all the coaches love him and how hard he works, how fearless he plays in the outfield. He'll die for everything. And yeah, I think he's going to make it really hard to keep him out of the order, because his defense is so good. But I think he's going to force me to do it because his bat is going to get much better.
Yeah, I like this guy a lot. Great kid, great work ethic. I could see this guy being a top of the order type hitter. Give him a year or so to really develop that bat, because I think KJ, for a long time, it felt like your team never really had a star center fielder defensively. It was always like you were putting bats out there and just whatever mistakes they make in the outfield, they'll make up with their bat. I feel like you've got a gold glove caliber center fielder with Owen Weibrecht. I really like this guy a lot in terms of his attitude, and I think his bat, which is, in my opinion, the easiest thing to develop, especially for the Bears, is teach somebody how to hit. I think you're looking at a guy who could be a big player for this age. So very excited for him. Moving into the rest of the top 10, let's start with number 6. I would say these top 5 prospects are all super high ceiling players. I don't know how high this guy's ceiling is, but he is a pro's pro. He has a super high floor. I think he's ready to go in and be a top player right now. He's our number 3 infield prospect, number 1 16U prospect. It is Brady Schmidt. Not necessarily the big body, not necessarily the high exit velocity, but in terms of defense, in terms of good at bats, in terms of being able to put the barrel on the baseball, I think this guy really does it well. I like this guy a lot. Bernie, want to throw this one to you. Brady Schmidt, to me, just feels like a pro right now. He's out there, he's polished, and he's ready to make an impact. Give me your thoughts on Brady Schmidt going into 2024, Bernie.
Yeah, I'm not going to sit here and act like I've watched, a million Brady Schmidt at bats or anything like that. Before I've seen, right, he spent some time with Dalton this year. From all the box scores, whether he pitching, defense, even offensively, he put up decent stats all fall. And that's impressive for a rookie. Coming into a very good Dalton team that, I don't know if necessarily had any spots open. He still went in there and took some at bats with some guys. And I think going to next year, I think you're just kind of expecting him to maybe grow into a little bit. Maybe he'll be a starter next year for that team. But I think it's just impressive he was able to make the roster in his first season and contribute to that really good team.
Yeah, that Dalton team has historically been very tough to break into. Brady Schmidt, clearly, in the eyes of Ike, very talented player. So exciting to see what he does going into next season. Our number 7 prospect, another 6U player. Number 2 6U prospect. Number 4 infield prospect, Cole Miller. KJ, this is kind of the opposite of Brady Schmidt. The size, the high potential, the exit velocity, the throwing velocity. This guy's got all the tools. It's just, can he put it all together and be that top player? KJ, give me your thoughts on Cole Miller, our number 7 prospect.
Yeah, this is a guy who I think, you could even put higher on this list. I think he can make a case, to be one of your best prospects. And, this guy has a huge size. I think he's well over 6 foot. This guy hits the ball hard. He's in the 90s exit velocity. I know he can pitch. He's a good pitcher. I know he plays really good infield. So this is a guy that can do a little bit of everything. And I think he could be a 5-tool type player. And I think come spring it's going to be really tough to keep this guy on a bottom roster. With how good he's going to be.
Yeah, I'm excited for this guy. I mean, he has all the tools that you're looking for in a prospect. This is a guy who I was super excited to get on my BWL team, and already I feel like he's played really well, taking some really strong at bats. I know he hit a home run the other day in the BWL as well. So I think this guy, sky is the limit for him. When you're talking about a future MVP caliber player, I think Cole Miller is that. Our number 8 prospect is our number 1 pitching prospect. Our number 2 15U prospect, it is Noah Hendricks. You see on here on the prospect list for his pitching, but I think he's very good defensively. I think he's starting to develop with the bat as well. But Noah Hendricks, I think where he's going to make his effort is on the pitcher's mound. I know Rob has talked very highly of this guy. Pitches to contact, gets a lot of ground balls, gets a lot of weak contact. A very, very solid option on the mound. KJ, I'm actually going to throw this one to you here. This is a guy who, on your BWL team, I think you got to coach him a chance with 15U at the last weekend of the season. What do you think about Noah Hendricks? And talk about his pitching, but where do you see him kind of fitting as a position player as well?
Yeah, Noah, he's a competitor, man, and I got to coach him one of the last weekends when Rob wasn't there, and I loved how he competed. He doesn't necessarily look like a big time pitcher. He's not necessarily big. He's not going to overpower guys, but this guy locates so well. He mixes pitches, and he's a competitor, man. He's fiery. He wasn't happy when I took him out. When I went to the bullpen when he was pitching. So he's a competitor. He wants to be out there. If I'm a coach, I want my players fighting like that. So he's competitive, and the bat is coming along. He can play outfield, he can play infield, he can do a little bit of everything. But the bat's coming along. I know he had a good hit when I was coaching him. I know he's taken some really good at bats in the BWL when he's gotten in there. So I think the bat's going to come along, but I think what he gives you on the mound is going to earn him more at bats and more chances to break into the lineup.
Yeah, he's a stud, especially on the pitcher's mound. And I think, defensively, there's no questions about him. And I'm excited to see how he can kind of develop into his bat. Noah Hendricks, another big riser. He was number 25 on our prospect list in August. So he's up 17 spots here into the top 10. Our number 9 prospect is Braden Miller. We've talked about this guy a lot. Big, strong, everything you want in a prospect. Hard worker, great attitude here in the number 9 spot. He's our number 2 outfield prospect, number 2 14U prospect. This guy, he's a beast. I'm not sure what else there is to say about him. Home run power, lead the Bears in home runs type power potential. For him, it's just about getting more reps as a baseball player. So I think Braden just hasn't played tournament baseball long enough, but we've starting to see flashes. Obviously he had a 3-homer game this year. He came up to the top team, had a big hit in a top team game. But BWL hit a ball at least 95 miles an hour that almost took the third baseman's glove off. Absolutely smoked. So I think this guy, sky is the limit for him. Bernie, Braden Miller, I think definitely you're looking at him as a prospect with his bat. What do you think about Braden Miller? And kind of give me your thoughts about what his 2024 is going to look like for you, Bernie.
Yeah, I think playing the BWO for Braden, is going to be massive for him, right? Like you said, he hit a ball like 95, but he's getting consistent at bats in that B League. I think that's exactly what Braden needs. Just to take some more mature at bats. Can he cut down swing and miss rate? Can he cut down swinging it off sweet pitches, right? Because if Braden finds a fastball on his own and hits it, like we've seen, he's gonna hit the ball at least 95. He's gonna smoke the ball. So I think that if we just get some more reps, be a little more consistent, that this guy could be a guy who leads the Bears in home runs or something like that.
Yeah, 100%. I think this guy's got a chance to break with 14U Floyd in the spring. And even if he doesn't, if he starts on that Bell squad, I think he's going to find his way to 14U Floyd at some point. So excited about this guy a lot. And finally, to round out the top 10, we have Kobe Kennedy. He is our number 1 first base prospect, our number 3 15U prospect. This is one of our biggest risers as well. He was ranked number 35 in our last list, now number 10 here on the list, up 25 spots. KJ, again, kind of like we said with the other guys on the list, I would say this is arguably the second best hitter here on our top 10 prospects, maybe behind Joey Burgess. This guy's a beast, good power, good doubles power as well, and doesn't necessarily go up there and just swing at everything either. And I know, KJ, you've been talking about his defense has come a long way. KJ, give me your thoughts on Kobe Kennedy here in the top 10 prospects.
Yeah, Kobe's a beast, and he got the shot on the top team in the last week, and I coached him, and he jumped right into the middle of the order and made a big impact. He's got home run power, and he doesn't need to be a superstar on that Floyd team. As long as that Floyd team has enough, in their lineup for them to deal with some strikeouts that he's going to give you, for them to deal with stuff like that. So, he can be able to be himself. He doesn't have to be the top player on that Floyd team, But like you said, I know Rob really appreciates a good defensive first baseman. He's a really good defensive first baseman, in my opinion. A good lefty bat, and I think he's gonna force Rob to keep him on the top team.
Yeah, definitely there were never any doubts about his bat, but I think the defense has really kind of what's put him into that top team conversation as he's just a well-rounded player. So very excited to see what Kobe does going into next year. Okay, now that we've gone through the top 10 each individually, we'll start breaking these into small groups. So let's go with the next five, our 11 through 15. We've got Don Palucci at number 11. He's our number 5 infield prospect, number 3 14U prospect. Lucas Colson at number 12. He's our number 3 outfield prospect, number 4 15U prospect. Jude Ramirez, number 13. He's our number 5 15U prospect, number 2 first base prospect. Georgie Buhazen is number 14. He's our number 6 infield prospect and number 2 13U prospect. And Josiah Leaker is number 15. He's our number 7 infield prospect, number 4 14U prospect. Bernie, going to start with you here. Any of these 5 that you would like to go ahead and break down individually?
Yeah, so I'll start with Lucas Colson himself, just because this is a guy I've liked since the first practice. I know he's made a steady increase up our list since the last one. And, I think this guy already a good defender, a very good defender, like could be elite defender. I know he pitches. I think the one knock on was his bat, but I've seen him BWO a little bit. He's starting to figure out the bat. And if he figures out the bat, even enough, he's gonna be valuable to Rob enough to where he gets called to that team. And I think that with this kid's grit, his work ethic, that once he gets on a top team, he might not be giving it back.
Yeah, I was very impressed with his bat. I had never really seen him taking a bat in person up until BWL, and he was a super tough out. I don't know if we got him out the entire day. At least maybe once we got him out, but he was on base the entire day. Very, very impressed with him. KJ, of these other guys here in the top 15, give me a guy that you'd like to break down individually.
Yeah, I'm gonna touch on another 15U guy. Give me Jude Ramirez. This guy. I knew he was pretty good, man, but the bets he's taken in BWL to this point, he's shown that he can be a superstar. He's been the superstar for his BWL squad. The guy just goes up there and fights. And, I remember him getting in free swing for the first time. He was swinging and missing, constantly. And I don't know if he's swung and missed much in the BWL against live pitching. That's how much of a transformation he's made. And I think, we just talked about Kobe Kennedy. Jude Ramirez also plays first base. I think he's going to challenge Kobe for that job come spring.
Yeah, I mean, great size, great power. I mean, he's been, a steady member of that BWL team. I mentioned Lucas Colson. It was tough to get him out. Jude has gotten out very little, in the BWL so far. And even when he does get out, he's usually hitting the ball hard. So Jude, he's been super, super impressive for me in the BWL, and I think this is a future star in the Bears. The other members of the top 15, Don Palucci, very quickly, I think this guy is going to break camp with 14 Floyd going into this season. I think defensively he's come a long way, but his bread and butter is going to be with the bat. He really impressed me down the stretch with his at-bats, especially playing in those higher-level tournaments. He proved he could hang with that team. Georgie Buhazen, talk about grit. I mean, this guy is one of those kids that is not going to let himself not succeed. Work ethic is there. He's not going to let himself make mistakes. I ended up trading him in the BWL. I didn't want to, but KJ wouldn't make a trade with me without him in it. But when I had him on my team, he didn't make mistakes for me at second base. And immediately after I traded him, we started making mistakes at second base. So, I think he just shows you grit and hard work definitely matters, because if you look at him, he's not necessarily big size. He doesn't put up big metrics, but he's got the mentality you want for a Bear player. And then finally, number 15, Josiah Leaker. Super slick defender. I think for him, the challenge is always going to be the bat. But down the stretch with the Bell team, he really started to hit well. I'm excited to see if he can transform himself into a top team hitter going into next year. Okay, our next 5 here, 16 through 20, we've got Connor Kennedy, our number 8 infield prospect, number 2 12U prospect. Hunter Finley, our number 4 outfield prospect, number 3 12U prospect. We've got Bentley Radford, our number 9 infield prospect, number 2 11U prospect. Evan Wheatley, who's our number 2 pitching prospect, and number 6 15U prospect. And Jacob Lowry, who's our number 10 infield prospect, and number 3 13U prospect. KJ, we'll start with you this time. Give me a player here of this group of 5 that you'd like to break down.
I'll talk about Evan Wheatley. This guy, He's got huge size. You guys see, he's probably the tallest player in the Bears. He sits around 6'5". And he doesn't overpower anyone on the mound like you think he would based on his size. But this guy just pump strikes. He's got a good curveball. When you talk to Evan, he's a little goofy. He's funny. He's a little quirky. But when he's on the mound, he's all business. And I think, as a coach, this guy is a bulldog, and he's definitely coming along with the bat as well. He's hit some balls, some rockets in the BWL to this point. He's pitched some big innings, like I noted. And I think, his pitching is going to get him more at bats and get him more time. And I think that's what Evan needs to bring his game to the next level.
Yeah, we put him down here as a pitching prospect, but I've been impressed with his at bats in BWL. So I think he's got a little bit more in the tank with the bat than maybe people are giving him credit for. Bernie, these group of 5 here, give me a player you'd like to break down.
Yeah, I'll go to 11U, and I will talk about a little Bentley Radford. I think this is someone that's basically unknown to the Bears mass, but he put up a very good season with Smith. He just joined this past fall. This player I've had him for a long time. This kid's a hard worker. He can throw strikes on the mound. He might be, getting near kind of an elite defender. In the bat, he put up a good season with Smith. So I know as Mac's seen this guy more and more this winter, working in practice, he's liked him more and more. I think that this is a guy that will break camp with that team, and I think that he's gonna give some guys a run for the money for a starting spot.
Yeah, I like this kid a lot. Very recently I've gotten to be at some more 11U practices, and this kid immediately has stood out to me. And when you think about that infield, man, Owen Dobrinsky, Carson Griffith, and maybe even adding Bentley Radford into it, that's a very good infield in terms of second, short, and third base. So I'm excited for this kid to really make an impact. I haven't seen this kid hit at all, so not sure what he's going to offer there. But with the glove, I think this guy could be an impact player right away. The other players on this list, number 16, Connor Kennedy. I think this is a guy who has all the athleticism, all the tools. Can he put it together and be a top team player? But I think he's already shown some really good growth in his time with the Bears. Hunter Finley, defensively, I think kind of like Owen Wybrecht. Defensively, I think this Burnsville team's been looking for a good center fielder, and they may have just found one with Hunter Finley. The question's going to be with the bat and with the arm. What else is he going to produce for you? But I think defensively, he's already there. And then Jacob Lowry, again, kind of like George Uguhazen, grit, hard work. I'm very impressed to see. Obviously, this kid's very new to this level of baseball, so still super raw. But for him, I think the potential is very, very high. And he's one of our biggest risers as well. He was prospect number 40 back in August, so a big rise for him. Okay, let's start breaking these down by 10 here. Let's start with the 20s. We've got Giovanni Palucci at number 21, Nolan Chilton, number 22, Lucas Perry, number 23, Gabriel Brown, number 24, Carter Radford, Bentley's brother, number 25, Maxim Baradko, number 26, Seth Mullen, number 27, Jude Blattner, number 28, Nick Byrne, number 29, and Caden Benner, number 30. Let's start with you, Bernie. Give me one player here that you'd like to talk about in terms of their prospect ranking.
Yeah, I'll go back to 14U. Talk about a little Maxim Baradko. This is a guy who I think was injured the majority of the summer season. But once upon a time, this guy was, a top-ranked prospect. I think that, kind of like a Jackson Dormeyer situation where he kind of struggled coming back. But I think that, with him getting a lot of reps in the BWO this winter, I think he could be right back to, being that top prospect. I think this guy, maybe not out of camp next spring, but at some point will make an impact for 14U Floyd.
Yeah, obviously the injury really derailed his season last year. When he got hurt, he was already called up to 14U Floyd, getting raving reviews at that team, and then really got hurt at a bad time because then in the fall season he missed a lot playing football. So he really kind of had his his path derailed last year. This spring, 14U Floyd's gonna have a couple players in high school ball, so there's definitely some openings for Maxim to really kind of retake that spot. I'm very excited for him. KJ, a player here from 21 to 30 that you'd like to touch on.
Yeah, I'll go with Nick Byrne. Here's a guy we talked about for a long time. Seems like he's been a prospect for a long time, never really high on the list. But Nick might just force me to put him on the 13U A roster. This guy is fearless at the plate. He swings hard. You never have to worry about him taking fastballs down the middle. He's up there ready to hit. He can play a decent outfield. He can play some first base. He got on the mound. It was pumping strikes in the BBL. He had two really good at bats in the BBL, including one hit and an RBI. And Nick Byrne might just force my hand to put him out there. And he's someone who, has always had the work ethic, but he's always been a little bit, behind. He's not specialized in anything. He's not has one huge skill, but this guy continues to just grow every single season. I remember having this guy at 10U, and he would swing at pitches that hit him, and now he's up there taking curveballs right off the plate, then smacking fastballs, and he's taking these great at bats. And I think Nick Byrne might just force my hand to do it. And a team that was a little weak in the outfield, I think Nick Byrne could fit right into that lineup.
Yeah, again, kind of like the other two guys we've talked about at this age. Talk about grit, talk about hard work. This guy's been super, super impressive to me lately. I know came up with a big hit in BWL in the last week we played. Went up there and pounding the strike zone on the mound. This guy just continues to make the most of his opportunities. Very excited to see where he kind of develops going forward. Real quick, I'll give a sentence on the rest of the players here. Gio Palucci, a hard worker, definitely a bat-first type player, but I think starting to develop defensively as well. Nolan Chilton, great size, exciting arm on the mound, but I think where he's going to make his bread and butter is going to be with that bat. Very high potential with him. Lucas Perry's the opposite. His arm is really starting to get him some looks. 15U Floyd's deep at pitching, but Lucas Perry may be an impact arm even for that team going forward. Gabe Brown, very, very inexperienced, very raw, but good size, good work ethic. I know he wants to just dive in and get all involved, so I think he could be a big player. Maybe not next year, but 2025, look for Gabe Brown to really start to develop into a big player. Carter Radford, Bentley's younger brother. I think this guy still trying to kind of find his way, still a little bit behind in terms of where his brother is, but you can definitely see the potential with him, both with the glove and the bat. Seth Mullen, super slick defender. What's he going to give you with the bat? Jude Blattner, a guy who had a very good season for Driscoll. Again, kind of like Maxim, got hurt, kind of derailed his middle of the year where he was really hot, but looking to turn things around going into this winter. And then Caden Benner, a guy who's just been super impressive for me here in the first couple weeks of the BWL. Good defensively behind the plate, and with the bat, I think is starting to develop as well. Okay, let's get into the 30s here. We've got number 31, Colin Sandler. Number 32, Anthony Young. Number 33, Max Sandler. Number 34, Joey Haddican. Number 35, Johnny Armbruster. Number 36, Dowd Ishmael. Number 37, Owen Pritchett. Number 38, Zach Reich. Number 39, Connor Murphy. And number 40, Reed Ruscio. Bertie, we'll start with you this time. Give me a player here in the top 40 that you'd like to go ahead and touch on.
Yeah, so I think, at some point we've talked about a lot of these guys, but I want to go to a guy I don't think we've talked about basically at all over the course of the season. I'm going to talk about Owen Pritchett from 11U. This is a guy I've liked more and more recently. I know he's gotten in extra programs. I know his free swing record is very high for his age. I think he's up in like 72, 73, which is, would rank right among the top of that age group for Max 11U team. And yeah, this guy put up a good season for Smith. I like his work ethic. I see him up there on Tuesdays doing, pitching 500 reps even. So it seems like he's getting more bought in. I think if he stays that way, I think some of the tools are there. I think he could put together, and maybe not make 11U Floyd out of camp, but again, push for a job somewhere over the course of the year.
Yeah, this he's been in the Bears for a long time, he's a veteran for sure in terms of the Bears, and finally starting to catch his legs. I know the first year and a half, I think, in his Bear career, he was playing up in age, so he was a little bit behind. Now that he's playing his rightful age, I think you're starting to see him really start to develop into his own. Very excited for him going forward. KJ, a player here in the top 40 that you'd like to break down.
Yeah, I'll touch on, I'm going to go ahead and touch on two, and that's got to be the Sandler brothers. These guys have taken the BWL by storm. And, I'm not going to lie to you and say I was a big fan of the Sanders before BWL started, but they're making it really hard, not to like them. These two both of them have came out and really dominated in the BWL. I think, Max is the infielder, correct?
Yep.
Max has basically won the starting shortstop job in his league in the BBL and hasn't made an error. I mean, this guy makes every play. He got on the mound and kept it, kept it into a close game when he got the chance to pitch. He's came up with a couple, I know he's hit multiple home runs. And then his brother, Colin's had some huge hits already for that team. I know he had a big home run in week 2. I know he had a big double in week 1. And I think, he's gets a little inconsistent on the mound, but I think, eventually he's going to play a role on the mound in the BWL. And I think both these guys, man, are really putting, themselves on the map in this BWL. And it reminds me a lot of what Dane Pastrana did last season, at that same age. He wasn't on the radar. He had a huge BWL season, put himself on there, and I think that's what both the Sandler bros are doing.
Yeah, I mean these two, it's been super fun to coach them here in the BWL. And I'll tell you what, I think a lot of people kind of said Colin was maybe not the better one, but definitely the higher ceiling. But I think Max has really proven himself. Like you said, KJ, he hasn't made a mistake at short. He was not supposed to be my starting shortstop. I drafted a player to play short who ended up, I guess he got hurt and couldn't play. So I ended up putting Max at short, and he has not made a mistake. He's made every single play, and now he's starting to hit as well. It's been very nice to coach both these guys, and very, very impressed for them. Super excited to see what they're going to do going into next season, and just it makes you think, man. If we didn't have the B League, neither of these two would have gotten drafted, and you just wonder where their stock would be this winter. So very happy for that, and very happy for both these guys. The rest here of the top 40, we've got Anthony Young, who, again, has shot up this list, a very impressive player, great bat, and even him in the BWL has been impressive with the types of bats he's taking off of 18U pitching. Joey Haddikin, he's been a little bit inconsistent, but I think still one of those players that you like a lot, takes good at bats to the plate, very good defensively in the outfield, good base runner, just an all-around very solid player. Johnny A still kind of developing into his power, but definitely you started to see him make a lot of solid contact this year. Defensively, he's come a long way as well. Dowd Ishmael, pure body, pure power type guy. If he can really kind of get a little bit more experience in the tournament world, he could be a huge, huge power source for that team. Zach Reich, a guy who does not look like it, but has a ton of power at the plate. I've been really, really impressed with his defense, though, moving all around the infield and making plays at each spot. Connor Murphy, a guy who very late in the season started to come on to my radar. He's a guy who really is fundamentally sound, really started to hit late in the season, and again, very solid in the infield. And then Reed Rustio as well. This is a guy who has joined the Bears, gotten all in, he's been in free swing, been in pitching, and a guy who I think is going to really turn himself into a good player if he continues to work at it. Finally, we've got the rest of our top 50 here, number 41 through 50. We've got at number 41, Andrew Kahlberg. Number 42, Alex Demertzes. Number 43, Josh Kinsey. Number 44, Brandon Wheatley. Number 45, Tucker Pawnell. Number 46, Caden Fenberg. Number 47, Carson Warner. Number 48, Eric Rahi. Number 49, Ethan Mon. And number 50, Ethan Portell. I'll tell you what, some BWL players on this list, some very high potential players on this list, and also some very solid players on this list here. KJ, I'll let you go first here. Give me a player in the top 50 that you'd like to go ahead and talk about.
Yeah, I'll go to the back half of this list and give me Ethan Mott. Here's a guy who didn't get drafted in the BWL, got picked up late, and he's taking advantage of that shot. I had to drop another player because, Ethan's been so good. I kept him on the roster. And so, Ethan has gone there. He's played a really good defensive first base. He's a starting first baseman in that BWL league. He's played a really good first base, and he's just taking great at bats. He's a guy I thought, would be a little overpowered. I thought he was overpowered in last year's BWL league when he got the chance, and I ended up drafting him and cutting him last season. But, this year he's facing better competition. He's facing pitchers that are 3 years older than him. Varsity pitchers, guys that are going to be college pitchers, and he's taking really good at bats, and he's had a couple really good hits, for me in this BWL season. And I think, he's going to earn himself more at bats, and, he might earn himself a look on a higher level team this spring.
Yeah, and defensively, I thought he's been very impressive as well. Made a couple nice plays at first base in the BWL last week. So, yeah, I've been impressed with this guy. What we've seen from him in BWL. This is a guy I liked a lot when he first joined the Bears. Kind of disappeared a little bit in the middle of last year. Didn't really hear a lot from him. But now I feel like he's starting to come back on people's radar. So, impressed to see Ethan Mon where he's at. Bernie, here in the top 50, give me a player that you'd like to talk about.
Yeah, I'll stick to the back half of that list as well. I'll talk about a little Eric Rahi. It's someone that I think once upon a time, some people would have laughed at for how awkward he looked on a baseball field. But this guy works very hard. And there are plenty of examples of guys who came into the Bears, might have looked awkward for even for a couple years, but then eventually turned out to be, superstar type players. I think Eric Rahi, with his work ethic, could be one of those guys. I know this guy's in multiple free swings. He's in precision pitching. I see him in 500 reps, knockout. This guy's in basically everything possible. He wants to be good. I know he didn't get drafted to BWL, but he keeps up on BWL like it's nothing. Like he keeps trying all this, like he keeps up on all the moves and everything like that. So I think the will for this player is there. I think the work ethic is there, and it might take a couple of years, but I think one day Eric Rahi will be, a player that can contribute to 14 Floyd.
Yeah, Bernie, I'm really glad that you talked about him. This is a guy who sometimes his mouth gets him in trouble a little bit, but if he can just keep his head down and continue to work, I think he's starting to really move up the ranks in terms of, the prospect rankings. Obviously, this guy was unranked in our previous 3 lists. He's really starting to come into his own, and he's a guy who, again, if he doesn't let his mouth get him in trouble, I think he could definitely be a guy who starts to make some waves. He's already started to really improve. He is a guy who is one of the better hitters on that Kreitler squad. He's a guy who you can put at first or at catcher, and he's not going to hurt you. He's not going to make any superstar plays or anything. But he'll catch the ball, he'll, make the plays he needs to make. And he's a guy who I think nobody can say he's not working hard. And he's a guy who's actually been in precision pitching over the last couple of months and really started to develop into a strike thrower, and his velocity starting to increase. So I think this is a guy, if he just keeps his head down, I could definitely see him really starting to develop going forward. The rest of the top 50 very quickly. Andrew Kohlberg, this guy we talked about a lot. Great defensive catcher, starting to kind of develop into his bat as well. Alex DeMertzes, super slick infielder. I think he is really making waves on that Driscoll squad, and I think he's going to get some looks in the future if he can get a little bit bigger and maybe grow his metrics. Josh Kinsey, super raw baseball player, but I think is a guy who I like a lot. His attitude is great. His work ethic is great. On this list, definitely because of that work ethic and potential. But I think if he puts his head down for another year, I think you could see this guy really shoot up this list. Brandon Wheatley, this is Evan Wheatley's cousin. This is a guy who I didn't even know who he was over the first couple practices. It took me several practices to even learn his name. But now that I know his name, I'm really starting to like his work ethic. I think he's a guy who's going to make a run at the Driscoll squad and maybe even the Floyd squad at some point in 2024. So look out for Brandon Wheatley. Tucker Pawnall, a guy who, again, is super raw, but I think kind of like Eric Rahi, if you told anybody that this guy would going to be taking good at bats, making contact, and honestly, where he's most impressed me has been defensively, I think they would have called you crazy. He's really worked hard. Another guy where if he could just put his head down and work for another year, I think you could see him on the cusp of that Burnstone roster. Caden Fenberg, another guy, can't doubt his work ethic. A guy who's worked himself into a very good catcher and sneakily had a very good offensive season, especially in the fall. Carson Warner, a guy who's super athletic. I think if he really can gain experience over the next year, I think you could see him on the cusp of that Floyd roster as well. And then Ethan Portell, another guy who's impressed me in BWL with the bat and also with the glove. I think he pitches as well. So he's a guy who kind of all around, I think, is a very solid player going forward. That was our top 50 prospects. To go ahead and end the show here, Bernie, KJ, there were 3 players who were ranked 25 or lower in our August list that are now in the top 10. I want you to give me one player that is 25 or later that you think could be a top 10 prospect when we make this list again, either in February or in May. I'll go ahead and go first, and I'm going to go with a guy that we just talked about, but a guy who I seriously think could be a top 10 guy, and that's Colin Sandler. all the tools in the world, an electric arm if he puts it all together, and the at-bats he's shown for me in the BWL so far. I think this guy, sky's the limit for him. Very excited to see what he does over the next year because I think his bat is great. His outfield play is very good, and I think he's got the potential to be a top pitcher as well. If he can just continue to keep up a good work ethic, I think you could see this guy being a top 10 guy. So Bernie, KJ, I'm not sure which of you, one of you is ready. KJ, you got a guy here?
Yeah, I'll go with Jude Blattner. I think this guy is going to have a big season. I don't think he's going to be on the Floyd roster. I think he'll be on a Driscoll. I know, Jeff really likes having him. And I think, Jude's going to get a chance to play a superstar type role this year. And I think that's going to be big for him to be a superstar. If you remember Jude's buddy, his best buddy when he joined the Bears was Wes Brody. And we saw Wes Brody take an absolutely huge jump. One of the biggest jumps we've seen in this prospect list was Weston Brody. So I think Jude could have a similar jump. I think Jude is ahead of where Wes was before Wes had that big jump. And so I think, Jude's on the cusp. He's a guy who just developed how to catch. He can pitch. He's starting to hit. So I think he's going to be a big time player. He's going to play a superstar role this year. And I think eventually we will see him on that Floyd team.
Yeah, I think that's a great call, KJ. How about you, Bernie? A player ranked 25 or lower that you could think could be a top 10 guy in a future list?
Yeah. Yeah, I think in terms of the next list that we put out, I could easily see Maxim Baracco on that list. Just like you said, this guy, I think, there's still a top 10 prospect in there. It's just he had that injury, football happened, he missed a lot this fall, but I think getting back into the swing of things, cut off the injury with BWL, I think he'll be right back in there. And just another guy, I think Connor Radford, brother of Bailey Radford, could also be in there one day as well.
Yeah, I think those are both great calls. Definitely a lot of talent there as well. So this is going to be our top 50 prospects again. After the winter, after everybody goes through winter training, we see guys develop metrics. Obviously, we see the BWL season. We're going to rank these players again in February. Last year, Braden King was our number one prospect in November, and he held the number one prospect in February. But I believe our top five, 3 different players were in the top 5 when we did it in November, and then in February, 3 different players had made it into the top 5. So I think we could see changes in this list depending on the BWL season, depending on how guys work over the winter, depending on their metrics. So I'm very excited to revisit this one. On Friday, we're going to be breaking down BWL Week 2 and also previewing BWL Week 3 on our BBN show on Friday. So definitely tune in for that. But that's going to do it for this episode of the BBN After Dark. KJ, Bernie, thank you for joining me. Everybody, thank you for listening, and we'll talk to y'all next time.